All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else? And in today's video, we are going to talk about archetypes and classes in Ashes of Creation. Now, the last time I started an MMO was about 7 years ago, and I remember the first thing I did before the game came out was go to YouTube and pore over all of the classes to get an idea for what character I wanted to make first. Ashes of Creation is no different in that regard, but their character choices are immense, with 64 different classes to choose from. In this video, we'll go through each of the 8 archetypes, what they are thematically, and how they function so that you have an idea for what to pick when Ashes does go live. Now, let's dive into it. Ashes of Creation's class system is unique in that there are 8 different archetypes, and each class is a combination of 2 archetypes. You have the tank, the bard, the summoner, the mage, the ranger, the rogue, the cleric, and the fighter. You could mix all these archetypes and make 64 different classes. So for example, you could go tank and be a guardian, or you could go cleric bard and be a scryer. 64 different options for classes leaves a lot of potential different designs for gameplay optimization in PvP and PvE areas, both of which are going to be extremely popular since this is an entirely immersive PvP environment. Last I'd heard, a lot of these classes will be available during the Alpha 2 testing phase, so until that time comes out, we will not know the details. However, once the Alpha 2 does come out, I will be pouring over all 64 classes with their skills and how they play and function. So, if you want to see that in the future, consider subscribing to the channel for future videos. Now, on to the archetypes. The first archetype we have is the tank. But do I really have to go through this? You guys play MMOs, you know what a tank is. They're tanks. They take damage. They're a tank, right? The tank is typically the bulkiest, hardest takedown character on the battlefield. The tank's main role, as it's described for Ashes of Creation, is a character that mitigates incoming damage for allies. This is broken up into 3 different types of tank builds for the Ashes of Creation system. Number 1, evasion tanks. I'm not exactly sure what this will entail at this time. Perhaps some Alpha 1 testers can provide some input in the comment section below. But to me, an evasion tank is one that puts down some sort of barrier or ability that either make your party dodge incoming damage, or it just causes your attackers to avoid attacking from a particular point in the battlefield. There's just my hypothesis, and as such, I have no fucking clue. I really don't. All I know is, like, on the Elder Scrolls Online, evasion is a dodging ability. So if you guys have any input in this, please let me know. I will not know until I get to Alpha 2. Number 2. Control tanks. Control tanks are quite popular in the Elder Scrolls Online with snares, roots, and chains. Basically, how I view a control tank is one that mitigates movement of enemies, is able to keep them off high priority targets like raid healers. So a control tank is what it says. You know, it's all about controlling the battlefield by slowing down the enemy, by keeping them in place, by just making sure, like, if you have somebody gunning for your healer, you can pull them off of your healer so that your healer can stay alive. Typically, healers are higher priority targets on the battlefield, and so if you can avoid that and keep people kind of locked down and avoiding your healers, the longer your group stays alive, the better chance you have of winning the fight. So that's how I kind of view control tanks. We'll have to see how their skills and everything plays out in the battlefield as well. 3, shield tanks. I mean, seems pretty self-explanatory. I think they just provide different types of shields, to the battlefield. It's interesting that they have all these different types of tanks, and so it's kind of cool that they're opening up different systems for the tank class. Another little tidbit in the wiki, linked in the description below, discusses how there will be skills based off formations, meaning some skills and abilities put down by a tank require coordination from your group in order to get their full effect. I personally am very intrigued by what kind of possibilities this entails for value of tanks in a PvE and PvP setting. So I'm going to keep referencing the Elder Scrolls Online because that's the MMO I currently play. That's the MMO that a lot of my, people in my community play as well. And so I'm going to draw connections to that. If you're not an Elder Scrolls player, I totally get it. But yeah, in general, tanking on the Elder Scrolls Online is kind of, for a lot of the content, it's pretty boring. It's pretty bland, pretty vanilla. And so when I saw this, I was actually pretty intrigued by it because I do a little bit of everything. I do some healing, I do some tanking, damage dealing. And so I'm intrigued by having these sorts of capabilities. I think there's a place in the battlefield, PvP and PvE alike, for having buffs to your group. And having formation like mitigation things is it's a smart defense, I guess. It's not just like, hey, I activate the skill and now everybody in my group takes 30% less damage. It's I activate this skill, and if you stand in this formation in this certain way, you will now take this less damage. It requires coordination of the tank to make the call out, and it requires the coordination of the group to get in the right formation in order for them to take advantage of that buff. I think these are the types of plays that are very smart for group-based PvP. I'm very, very excited to see how this plays out, personally, because it opens up a whole different type of PvP that I've never really experienced before in the main MMO I've been playing for the last 7 years. So very, very exciting to see what happens with that. Second archetype discussed in this video, and the first in my heart, is the Bard. ESO doesn't have a Bard class, and in my Discord I've been hoping for them to come out with a Bard class for a few years now, and it's now just turned into an ongoing joke that, if the new chapter release, hopefully it's the Bard. But now that Ashes of Creation has a Bard class, I think I'm gonna have to be a Bard just for the brand. Like I would just be a poser at this point. Like if I'm not a Bard, what am I at this point? You know what I mean? And so, despite that, I was reading the wiki and I was looking over a couple of the live streams and everything, and it looks very interesting as far as how it's discussed in the wiki. The Bard is an amplifier on the battlefield, an attack damage for foes, and as the wiki describes it, is able to speak into being terrible nightmares or convince foes to become friends. Now, this seems more like a PvE type of thing, where you can terrorize your opponents, your enemies with a spell, and maybe that causes them to no longer attack, like a fear type of thing, some sort of CC. Convince foes to become friends, stop them from attacking you. Obviously, in a PvP environment, where other players, you're not going to be able to just control their characters' minds and all of a sudden get them to stop attacking you as a Bard. But it's very interesting from an Overland perspective, especially in harder content. So I'm curious to see how that goes. But from a PvP perspective, considering that this game is more of a group-based combat MMO, and combat will be balanced around group play and not solo, this has been very clear. A lot of ESO's combat is based around solo PvP. And so these are going to be two different games. And so a lot of the combat in ESO is based off of, trying to balance classes around each other and trying to make them a little bit more competitive with each other. Whereas this is going to be more of a rock, paper, scissors type of game. And I can't remember exactly how it goes, but like melee fighters have an advantage over archers. Archers have an advantage over mages. Mages have an advantage over melee fighters. I think that's kind of like what they're trying to do here. And so you will get hard countered in a solo perspective in this game. And so how hard countered you get, I have no idea. I have no idea from that perspective, but they're looking to balance this game from a group play perspective. And having a class like the Bard that can amplify your group, that can amplify your damage dealing abilities, seems pretty exciting. The Bard is listed as more of a jack of all trades type of class, with their buff capabilities often being beneficial based on their position in the battlefield. Often in my view in the past my personal view of the Bard has been character that stands in the back, casting songs and spells to amplify a group while not taking damage. Ashes has a different painting of how the Bard will function. Their entire point of view and how they want to kind of construct the Bard is it's not just through song, it's also through actions. So if a Bard is swinging a sword and they're around other melee, like how they kind of discuss it in the wiki and through the live streams, is if they're swinging a sword and they're doing damage, other people around them are rallying because the Bard is inspiring them to attack harder. That's how they kind of view how the Bard will function. And so we'll have to see how those mechanics work and what kind of benefits they provide and everything. But yeah, in a group play situation where you can potentially modify your group from a non-healing perspective, the Bard seems kind of interesting to me. And maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I'll be the only Bard in Ashes of Creation. Who knows? But yeah, that's what's very interesting to me, is like being able to amplify and modify a group in a group play situation is extremely valuable. So, or can be at least. The third archetype in Ashes of Creation is the Mage. With control of the essence, a huge aspect to the lore in Ashes, they have control over all of the elements. The stronger a mage gets, the closer they are connected to the essence in Ashes of Creation. Now you guys can look up Ashes of Creation lore, but the essence is basically like the magical element to which everything grows. The closer you are to the essence, the more powerful you are. And mages have control over that. And so basically, the Wikipedia describes this class with the ability to utilize elements around them or even the air. They even mention setting the air on fire. I would assume that this type of class is similar to the Sorcerer in Elder Scrolls Online, basically a ranged style caster with great damage dealing abilities. One of their skills, Blink, is eerily similar to the skill Streak for Sorcerer. The ability to get distance from your opponents makes this class extremely interesting from a mobility perspective, and possibly one of the better specs to potentially play solo on, if solo is possible. I don't know for sure. Like, obviously, I've not gotten in here. I don't know if solo PvP will be a thing, but having that type of mobility with a skill like Blink can be extremely powerful. It can be extremely powerful on a huge battlefield where you're playing 250 v 250 or 300 v 300. Having the ability to get in and get out. You know, the longer you can stay alive in those types of fights and dish out damage, the better off your group is. And so the Mage is going to be, it will probably be pretty damn powerful. So, yeah. The fourth archetype I want to cover here is the Cleric. The Cleric, with powers over life and death, can heal themselves and allies while also taking health from their opponents. Not just a healer, this class seems to be built in a way to be more of a Magicka-based brawler, if you so choose to go that route. As far as comparables, this class seems most similar to a Templar in the Elder Scrolls Online, a class with great healing and off heals, as well as the ability to kill opponents. They also have the ability of Resurrection, able to revive dead allies. I'm personally curious if in the future of Ashes, the Cleric will be able to use more of a necromancy-based magic if they're corrupted. This last part, guys, this is pure speculation. Like I said, I haven't played anything, and this is just me reading the wiki and pouring through live streams and everything. But corruption magic is, you know, it's the evil source of the essence, basically, is how I've interpreted it for Ashes lore. And so if you can revive allies, if you're corrupted or you're using corrupted magic, hypothetically, do you have the ability to do like necromancy type things? I don't know. I doubt it, but that was the first thing that came to my head was like, wow, you can revive people. Can you do other evil revivals? I don't know. We'll see. The next class, the fifth one, is the Fighter. Fighter's pretty straightforward. Melee, physical brawler. Fighter is supposed to be able to be a master of many weapons, but their main strength is brawling burst damage with the ability to close the distance and finish opponents quickly. Stephen Shreve describes this type of class as a mobile warrior with the ability to get to the back lines and focus healers quickly. Being able to take out healers, as I've said before, in a quick manner can often end group v group battles very quickly when the opposing team loses their healers. If you like the in-your-face brawler type of class, the Fighter is probably for you. Sixth archetype, Ranger. Once again, Ranger's pretty straightforward. Master of bow and range combat, dealing damage from afar. Not much else in the wiki at this time. It seems like there's quite a few classes that they haven't hashed out yet. They haven't fully developed. A lot of them will be available during Alpha 2, and we'll go through them more in detail at that time. Nor has much been mentioned about the Ranger on live streams, although one of the more recent videos in the live streams did cover bow gameplay. My assumption, and once again, guys, it's an assumption. We can go back and look at this 6 months from now, 8 months from now. We can see if I'm wrong. This type of class is that they'll have to I think how this will play is being a very glass cannon-y type of range build. Like if they want hard counters, they're going to be able to do damage at range. They're going to be able to keep their distance. They're going to have high mobility. But if you get your hands on them, they're going to be squishy. Like that's typically how these types of classes play. Like you have great risk reward. If people get in up and personal in your face, you die. If you can keep your distance, you can dance around and everything, you can dish out a lot of damage. One of the skills that they mentioned in the wiki is the ability to camouflage. And camouflage is not like Nightblade Cloak, for those of you that are curious. It's a skill that only functions at long range. So if you're at long range, you can use camouflage and people can't see you. Once you get to medium and short range, you do get revealed. And so it is a way to kind of maneuver around battlefields at distance. Very, very interesting. Very interesting in my opinion. Seventh archetype is the Rogue. Stealthy assassin specializing in high damage from the flank. Typically, for me, the Rogue is my most played class across all games. I'm personally just a huge fan of cutthroat, high damage, high risk, high reward playstyles. Like the Rogue playstyle is just perfect for me. If you play it well, you can kill people very quickly. It's very satisfying. And if you mess up, you die really quickly as well. And so this is typically my favorite type of playstyle. And so I find myself probably venturing into this. We'll see how much the bard allures me, but if it's not very powerful, I'll probably go to the rogue, or I'll look at the rogue myself. But yeah, the other thing from a PvE perspective, as they talk about this, is rogues are going to be good at finding traps, treasures, and doors in dungeons. So if you go to a new dungeon, they're going to be able to find things apparently at a higher rate than other characters in the game. And so they mentioned it in a live stream where in some of these dungeons, they're going to have rotating secret doors. They're not going to be in the same spot over and over and over again, because they don't want, like, once a rogue finds one, it's not going to be like the same spot all the time and you can't bring a rogue anymore. They're going to be able to find like some of the best treasures in dungeons. And so if you're doing these dungeon raids and you're trying to get loot and drops and everything, bringing your rogue will be valuable for that reason. And then the final archetype for the Ashes of Creation is the Summoner. Summoner is what it says it is, an archetype that can use summons in the battlefield. The Summoner is able to use many different types: healing, damage dealing, and tanking. I'm uncertain as to whether or not they'll be damage dealing summons themselves or modifiers. Like they haven't really gone into that yet. Well, do they modify damage dealing around you, or do they damage deal themselves? Do they tank themselves? I'm not really sure. They just, like, with these summons being able to do healing, tanking, or some sort of damage dealing, I envision this type of archetype as, once again, a more jack of all trades type. Like you have the capabilities to do all these things. In a pinch, they can do one thing or another. Now, I am personally curious about these summons and whether or not they are targetable. Like, can you target these summons? How much health do they have? And how many summons can you have out all at once? Summons in the Elder Scrolls Online do a great job of mitigating incoming damage. A lot of them have enough health to where when you're fighting multiple opponents, being able to have a summons or two out just makes it really tough for you to be targeted. It makes it really tough for you to be targeted. So I'm curious how the targeting type of system, like, it will tap target, do a good job of going past it, or will pets or summons get in the way? Are they going to have a high enough health pool to where you can kind of use them as, like, even if you're using damage dealing summons, are they going to be able to tank some incoming damage? Because in that regard, if it adopts some of the same mechanics, the Summoner could be very powerful in that regard. And so I'm curious to see how that's going to work. And so those are some things I'm going to keep in mind when I'm testing different types of summoners and everything, is how those types of functions work. If I miss anything with these guys, let me know in the comment section, because I'm trying to test as much as possible. I'm trying to get out as much information as possible for you guys when Alpha 2 goes live, so that I can learn it myself and I can provide that information to you. That's what I do. And so, yeah. If I missed something or there's something you're curious about that I did not cover, let me know. There you have it, folks. A rough outline of what the 8 archetypes are. What archetypes interest you the most? Leave it in the comment section below and let me know what you're looking at playing. For me, I mean, if I go Bard, I'm looking at Bard Cleric. If I don't go that route, I'm going to go Rogue Fighter, something like that. Rogue Fighter, maybe Rogue Cleric. Have that brutal gank damage with the healing of a Cleric. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure, but it'll either be Bard something, or maybe I go Bard Rogue. Maybe I just keep both, and I keep everybody happy by going Bard Rogue. But yeah, let me know in the comment section what you guys are kind of looking at, what interests you after listening to this and everything. And yeah, feel free to look over the Wikipedia. It is a great resource. Definitely check it out. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.